Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
There's a thin line between life and death. Like a tightrope, stretched taut. It challenges us, sometimes inviting, always terrifying. Sooner or later, we all walk that wire. Some as adventurers, adrenaline junkies. Some as heroes, risking our lives for others. Or some, most frighteningly, without choice or reason. Tonight, you'll hear the true life stories of people who walked that thin line and cheated death. Amazingly, they're moments of truth caught on video.
At that time, I really thought, if they don't get me out, I'm not getting out there.
When you're getting dragged at that speed, you can't do anything. You're completely in the lap of the gods.
It's just very, very dangerous. You know, Joe's head is right below you there.
When a propeller's spinning that fast, you don't see it, you just hear it.
The helicopter started to roll over very gradually, and that's when the blade started hitting the ground.
If that hit you, it could have taken your head off.
I thought for sure that that was it. It was over. I was going under, and there was nothing that was going to save me.
I saw this child hanging, and I recognized her clothes. And that was my daughter.
Air shows, the sky fills with white-knuckle feats of flight, and from below, hundreds gawk in awe. Everyone knows the risk, both the crews riding their speeding bullets and the spectators standing in the line of fire. Maybe that's the attraction. The thrill is in the danger. Schenectady, New York, an August Sunday.
We were standing close to the runway, and within a few minutes we noticed that there was a helicopter approaching. And then it seemed like for a long period of time he was hovering just nose in toward us.
We were sitting out with our feet dangling over the side of the helicopter, looking at the crowd, basically putting on an air show performance.
We're in a high hover, very heavy aircraft, because it had only been in the air less than an hour, so full load of gas.
And then I noticed we started to descend. But I noticed we were picking up a tremendous amount of speed.
One of the guys behind us yelled, "Rotor wash."
All we had enough time to do was to swing our feet in before we hit.
Time for me seemed to stop, and I had this strange sensation that I knew, I was absolutely certain that I was going to die. Under my breath, I said goodbye to my wife just before we hit.
It hits with such an impact, and it's like when you take a beer can or something, you crumple it. Just like everything just kind of crinkle up and stuff, and you kind of get an eerie feeling, like a chill up your spine. You just go, oh God, like this thing's just tearing apart.
And all this time that they were descending, I'm looking right into the pilot's eyes, and I could see his eyes get bigger and bigger.
Objects being tossed in the air, glass shattering. The flight control cables that go through the ceiling, I can hear them snapping. Like the cable snaps, and you kind of turn your head, and all of a sudden, like, you know, if that cable would have hit you, it could have taken your head off.
And the helicopter started to roll over very gradually, and that's when the blade started hitting the ground. And then the blades started to come apart. They were destroying themselves. And at that time, the same time, the tail broke. And the blades from the tail were starting to scatter. And I thought, this is it. They're going to be coming apart and into us. And now it looked like a twisted, turning, dying insect as it was going around on the tarmac.
After the dust settles, I can hear fluid dripping. I can smell real noxious odors. Everything's really quiet for a few seconds. And I'm going, oh God, am I the only one that survived? Like, see Jim Simpson in the back, and he's kind of in a little ball. And I look at him, and he's all kind of like bent and twisted. Not a normal shape that would see somebody, almost like in a fetus position.
I'm sure I must have passed out for maybe a second or two because I recall being flipped. I knew there was something wrong, but I knew also that I had to get out.
He says to me, he said, you gotta help me, you gotta get me out. And I said, don't worry about it. And I tried to reassure him. I said, hey, I'll look after you, man. You're my responsibility.
The cargo door that we had been sitting in was now, I would say, 8 to 10 feet above our heads. And my fear at that point was there was going to be an imminent explosion.
Stay down! Stay down!
I'm pushing him up, and I can feel something dripping down my back. I don't know if it's the sweat or whatever. But what I didn't realize is I had a broken back at the time. I'd cut both my shoulder blades open, but that wasn't my concern. My biggest thing is to get him out of there before it explodes.
Everybody stay down! Everybody stay down, okay? How about somebody help him?
I remember them shouting at me, get away, it's going to blow. And I shouted back to them, I can't move. I was absolutely amazed by the fact that these people risked their lives to run forward to pick me up. And that's something that I'll always remember.
When you hover in one spot for a long period of time, you're actually destroying your airflow, because as the rotor blade goes around, you start pushing the air away, and you cut a hole in the sky, and the helicopter comes down. And basically that's what caused us to crash that day, because we created a big hole, and we just fell into it. Fortunately enough that nobody got hurt. That was a miracle in itself.
If you believe in fate, I suppose, as many people do, when your time comes, it's going to happen. And I feel that that day, it was my time, but for whatever reason, it changed. I don't think I cheated death. I just think I was given another chance at life.
Coming up, rescuers risk their lives to save a dead man. A daring plan to land a crippled plane. A cameraman is buried alive by a wall of fire. And a 12-year-old girl's deadly ride on a Ferris wheel. Snow in Las Vegas never happens. Floods in the desert, impossible. And when you're dead, or so they say. On the night of January 18th, Vegas odds turned upside down when a Jeep flipped into a flooded gully. Anyone inside? No one knew, but it was Curtis Harper's job to find out.
I went down on top of the Jeep, and I actually tried to reach into the window to feel my way through, but it was impossible. The water was too cold, it was moving too rapidly. I didn't even know what I was touching when I was touching things in there.
The next step, drag the Jeep from the icy murk. The rescuers made a bone-chilling discovery.
As they rolled the Jeep up on its side, you could just see a pair of legs with white shoes floating to the top of the water. That's one of the visions I'll never ever forget for the rest of my life.
What they found was a dead man, drowned, stiff from hypothermia. Frustrated, they tied ropes from the shore to dislodge the body.
As soon as he was tied, the current started to carry him away.
What happened then wasn't planned for. He actually flipped right as he came to the shore, and his arms kind of went over his head, and the rope just kind of slid off of him.
The lifeless body was now swept up in the raging current.
most physical thing I've ever done in my life was to try to hold on to this guy and hold on to the rope while they were trying to get a hold of him. You know, the force was so great. I just couldn't imagine. And when they pulled him out, they pulled my legs out from under me, so I was just dangling in the water with my arm wrapped through this rope.
Now it wasn't just the victim, but the rescuers that had to be saved.
Everything was full of water. It was ice cold. I was exhausted, and the water had a hold of me. And at that time, I really thought, if they don't get me out, I'm not getting out.
Billy was able to grab him by the waist belt, and we made a human chain and were able to drag Perry out of the water.
I was home sleeping, and Mom called me, and she said Murray's been in an accident in Las Vegas.
It was probably around 1 o'clock in the morning, 1 or 2, that she called and said that it didn't look good, and he'd been submerged underwater for a long time.
When Murray arrived, he had no clinical signs of brain function. His pupils were fixed and dilated. His skin was blue and somewhat frozen. Patients rarely survive a drop in body temperature to less than 93 degrees if they're seriously injured. Murray was a trauma patient whose body temperature dropped to 88 degrees. That's associated with a 100% mortality rate. We therefore decided that there would be no way to save this man using standard techniques, and it would be justified to use our new method. This technique removes blood from the bloodstream, circulates it through a rewarming machine, and then allows the warm blood to flow back into the body, where it immediately goes to the vital organs and warms them from the inside out.
At that point, it really wouldn't have mattered what they told me, because being a respiratory therapist and knowing what happens when you're without oxygen for 15 minutes, I knew my brother would be a vegetable.
The first thing I thought was I would prefer that he died than to have to live that way.
No adult had ever been underwater as long as he was, with the injuries that he had, and still survived without brain damage.
And I actually confronted Dr. Gentilello about his invention. I said to him, can you tell me that you're keeping my brother alive because there's hope, or are you keeping him alive so that you can consider your invention a success?
Murray lay in a coma for 3 weeks while his family waited by his bedside for some sign of normal brain function.
One night I had to come home. I was in with him and I was talking to him, and I said, Murray, I said, I have to go home for a couple of days, but I'll be back. So I have to say goodbye right now. And with his endotracheal tube in, he reached up with his chin. That's why my brother kisses his chin first. And he's on the bed, and he just reaches up with his chin with all his tubes and gave me a kiss goodbye. And I knew that if he knew that I was leaving, that he had to have brain function, that he was going to be okay.
I believe my first memory in the hospital was actually looking up at a television where we were seeing the undercarriage of a vehicle that looked really familiar. And then coming to realize that for sure that is my vehicle. Wow, those are my shoes. So I was confused. I didn't know what was going on, but having family members come in and talk to me, I was able to piece together that yes, I'd been in an accident. I'd been unconscious for quite some time. Nobody was really comfortable in giving a prognosis with me. I was pretty much the first patient that had endured what I had endured. Dr. Gentilello had created this machine. I just happened to be 4 miles away when I had hypothermic drowning. And it's pretty miraculous that I was there at the time and that he was there at the time. It was really overwhelming to watch the tape. All these men are risking their lives for me, and then I put them through this. At one point, there was a very haunting look from Perry Lloyd I'm below the surface of the water, and he has me trapped between his legs in a scissor lock, and he just looks up into the camera. It's like he doesn't know whether he's gonna make it. They're very special men, and I will never forget them.
Coming up, a cameraman shoots a video that may be his last. A runaway steed drags a jockey towards certain death, and a Ferris wheel turns into a deadly trap. They say flying is safer than driving, and they say statistics prove it. But cars don't fall from the sky. St. Augustine, Florida, another muggy summer day. Scott Gordon takes to the clouds for a routine test flight, then readies to land. But there's nothing routine about this day. 2 wheels where there need to be 3. No one is more alone than the pilot of a crippled aircraft. Those on the ground can only watch, helpless, or so you'd think.
Well, Scott had told us on the radio that, you know, he was getting 2 lights, not 3 like you should, and it was the left main was not showing. So we went out on a little patio area there and with Jim, and he had some binoculars and had Scott fly by, you know, and we would look to see, and we did verify that the wheel was not down.
When death is in the air, it strikes fast. But when it hesitates, people will try anything to cheat it. They needed a plan. Enter Jim Moser, aerobatic stunt pilot.
Much of my background of growing up in an aviation family was performing in air shows. And I worked with my dad, who was part of the air shows, in what was called the world's smallest airport, which was driving a truck with a platform mounted on top of it. And he would come in and land the airplane on top of the platform truck.
Jim came up with the idea of pulling a trailer behind a truck and having Scott come in and just set that crippled wing down on the truck.
Kind of a windy, gusty day, so I couldn't slow him down much more than about 90 miles per hour. And the truck pulling that heavy trailer couldn't do more than probably 75 or 80.
He kind of just inched up beside us. We were almost to 80 miles an hour, but not quite. So he just kind of creeped up beside us on the left-hand side and flew by. And I'm looking right at it when it went by.
If I got too slow there, the airplane would stall, and then I'd end up hitting the truck or, crashing out of control into the runway, and that would have really caused a lot of damage.
It was dangerous, and it was not an option. But as we were driving back to think some more, Joe said,
"Have him do that again, and I'll pull it down." Because it was just right there, it was just right beside the truck.
After we looked at all the different negatives and positives, we decided, yeah, this was doable.
Jim calls up on the radio and says, "Scott, we got another idea." And I'm like, "Well, okay, what do you got this time?" And he says, "Well, how about if we put Joe in the car and come up underneath you and see if we can match speeds and see if he can reach up and grab the gear."
It was a gamble. A life saved or lives lost to gravity and the spinning blades of a deadly propeller.
It was a real kind of windy, gusty day. I had to really kind of jockey the power back and forth at just a perfectly constant speed. If the airplane would have hit a pocket or something, we could all ended up as a big ball on the end of the runway down there.
Things started getting busy. I mean, hanging out of the roof of the car, doing 80 miles an hour, the wind resistance was quite strong. It was hard to hold your eyes open. I was close to the propeller, but when it's spinning that fast, you don't see it, you just hear it. That fear of it coming down on top of the car is there. I was stretched out trying to reach it, but I was about 12 inches short of getting my hands around it.
You have to judge 6 inches, and you know Joe's head is right below you there, and you don't want to go down 10 or 12 inches, so everything's just very small corrections.
He backed off the throttle and the airplane settled down just about another foot. And I can remember getting my fingers around the edge of the tire you know, just not a good grip, but just around the edge. And I gave one little pull, and it wasn't enough, so I walked it up around the edge of the tire and then yanked it for everything I had. You could see it climbing back up, and all three legs were down. You know, it was like, wow. The wheel finally came down.
Just as it came down, I got that third green light. There was a lot of adrenaline going there, you know. It was really incredible. I mean, it really was, and he was able to pull it off.
There was absolutely no damage except for the top of the Audi, because when you pulled the wheel down, all I could hear was this pounding sound. And what it was is Joe was so excited that he was pounding on the top of the car.
When I got in and pulled in with the airplane, I knew that we pulled something off here that probably had never been done before, and who knows, might never be done again. I'm sure I probably wouldn't try it again.
He had some people around there with imagination. He had some people with experience. Everybody came together. It's something that you don't see every day on the TV.
Definitely something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. Jim Moser is the kind of guy that I'm sure will be my friend for life, and this just brings us that much closer together. And Joe really stuck his neck out for me. He did something for me that he didn't have to do.
To me, it was just friends helping friends.
Of all nature's forces, fire is the most terrifying, unpredictable, a phantom-like adversary. 1 second before you, the next behind, a flaming embrace. Mike Conway is a cameraman. His beat, the Western fires. Trained and outfitted by the fire department, he ventures forth when others flee, his unflinching lens capturing men at war with hellfire on earth. It's a cameraman's job to get close to the action. Get too close and you die.
They'd already lost some homes. It had already taken a toll, and it was only 20 minutes old.
Tahoe, Nevada. A canyon fire rages out of control.
The wind was playing a really dangerous factor in this fire, that it was doing what's called spotting, where it would jump up and the embers would ignite something a quarter mile away. It makes it very dangerous for the firefighter.
I expressed my concern about a small spot fire below the road down by the llama ranch down there. I was concerned about that, and I wanted to get some sort of air support. We were hoping not to throw any more fire below the road because we don't like burning up people's resources like that. The winds were to our back coming downhill. There was once or twice that the flames would stand up, which is an indication that the wind shift is imminent at that time.
Then the wind kicked up even more. The fire, as they say, got into the timber, and then it started crowning, which means it jumps from treetop to treetop.
There was only one road in, and the inferno had already sealed off one end of it. That left only one way out. If the fire swept below the road, cutting off their escape, all would be doomed. Expanding rapidly, over 70 miles an hour, the fire encircled its prey. An immediate evacuation was ordered.
I was in my vehicle at the time. I noticed Mike come running down the hill.
He says, "Let's get out of here, we're evacuating." I jumped into the back of the truck just because it was the closest truck to me and the farthest truck from the flame line.
We made eye contact. I was making sure that he was back there and settled.
I kept rolling tape, and I'm going, wow, the flames are getting closer. The flames are getting bigger.
And I went to give it gas, and it was dead. The flames were on top of us, no question about it. And with the screams, I didn't know what I was going to find when I came out to get them.
To try to describe it, considering it was only 35 seconds long, it was like listening to a twister. You can hear the ground crackle. The roar goes up as the flame comes towards you, and I can feel it pushing me down, just like in wind tunnel. So at the last minute, I dove into the corner of the bed of the truck. I started yelling. I was kicking my feet, trying to get the embers off me. I thought maybe this might be it. I jumped out of the truck. I put my left hand on the rail of the truck. I landed on my butt, on my left cheek with my wallet. Probably got hurt worse than anything, vaulting out of the truck because I'm not real athletic.
Where he didn't have his personal protective equipment on, his gloves, his hard hat, his shroud was all red. You can tell he was definitely severely burned at that point.
I looked pretty bad. My face started blistering. My left hand had a 3rd degree on my palm. The rest of my left hand was 2nd degree. My right hand was totally 2nd degree with a couple of 3rd degrees on the fingertips. I was pulling clumps off the back of my hair. I got so hot that the puff paint logo, which looks like a clapperboard for our company, osmosed right through the fire suit. What I was told by the Nevada Division of Forestry was I attained 1,800 to 2,200 degrees of temperature in order to make the suit melt. Well, it's unbelievable when paper burns at 451, and when you open your oven to do your turkey at 375, it's almost unbearable heat when you open the door of the oven. So you multiply that about 7 or 8 times and you can understand what it felt like.
Coming up, a jockey is trampled and dragged on the ride of his life. 2 sailors are crushed by a frozen sea, and a day meant for amusement turns into a nightmare. Man and beast joined as one. The courageous rider steering 500 pounds of raw animal power. A volatile cocktail of thundering muscle, greased lightning, control and chaos. A dangerous mix that can spell disaster.
Down the hill now. 3 more fences to go. Second, Sir Sagamore, who's nearly lost the rider. He's gone. The rider was unseated. Oh, he's still with that horse. He got dragged over the next fence, that rider.
April 20th, 1992, Adelaide, Australia. Simon Mills, jockey, is at the starting gate for the biggest race, not of his life, but for it. With hundreds of pounds of horsepower beneath him and only 1 lap to go, Simon and his steed make a deadly mistake. Before, the man controlled the horse. Now the roles are suddenly reversed. The crowd watches in helpless horror as the ragdoll jockey is mercilessly dragged. Moving at top speed toward the solid pine logs of the rapidly approaching jump fence, Simon faces certain death.
The fence where I jumped was on a very steep downhill run, and everything was fine up until a couple of strides away where the horse and I probably made a mistake in timing, and we landed badly, which catapulted me forward of the horse. And because we're running downhill, I couldn't push myself back. All I could do was fall. A split second later, I realised one of my feet is stuck in the stirrup irons, and that's when the fun started. When you're getting dragged at that speed, you're just like a big bag of potatoes. You can't do anything. You're completely in the lap of the gods. I noticed the next fence was coming up, and I thought, I'm in real bother here, because they have solid pine logs just before it, and if I'd hit that fence with the full force at the speed I was going, I wouldn't be here. I'd be 6 foot under. Just as I thought, I'm not going to walk away from this, my horse, an old experienced animal, instead of taking off 2 metres from the fence, he took off 5 metres from the fence. So by the time he was over the top of the fence, I was above him, catapulted. The horse saved my life, and that's the only reason I'm sitting here now. But then when you're up that high, you've got to come down. It was just a mixture of legs, arms, everything. As we're galloping along at 50 kilometres an hour, there was horses' hoofs everywhere, smashing down beside me, and one of the horse's back legs collected my arm and broke my arm, but that triggered the stirrup to break free, and then I just lay there, free as a bird. I thought I was fine until I looked at my arm, or noticed my arm wasn't in the position it normally is, and it was folded back the opposite way. It's hard to describe, but if you hit your arm with a big enough sledgehammer, you might know the feeling.
Miraculously, Simon's broken arm was the only injury he sustained in the incident.
The winning feeling of winning a race, it's a feeling of companionship between horse and rider. It's not just a feeling of that 2 or 3 minutes of racing. It's the feeling of weeks of preparation, and when it all comes out the way you want it to, it's heaven. It really is.
Coming up, a desperate struggle to save 2 men from nature's fury. And a girl clings for life on a wheel of terror. On the Bering Sea, off Alaska's frigid coast, sailed the Alaskan Monarch and its crew of 6. Crabbers all, and fearless in the face of ocean's fury, they knew not what awaited them. The sea, once their provider, was about to turn against them.
We could see that the harbor was frozen. The tide was packing the ice tighter around us.
We got about 90 degrees around and got a big ice float stuck in the bow. We stopped moving right opposite these rocks. We couldn't get any commercial help, couldn't get any help from the fishing fleet. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it looked like there wasn't going to be anybody help us out.
The ice was beginning to compact on the boat, and we lost our rudder that next morning.
About 7 in the morning, got a phone call from our operations center in Kodiak telling us that, hey, we've got a mission for you guys. We need you guys to fly out, get some parts from the harbor master in St. Paul, and fly them out to the vessel. They're a couple miles offshore.
The waves started to get deeper, the wind picked up.
And that was when things started getting rough.
Some of these big swells came in, and one hit us and washed right over the house. Turned us completely around with the bow heading into the rocks.
We knew that we were in a little bit more serious situation because the swells were becoming 10, 15 feet by then. We were getting hammered.
I wondered, how much can this boat take?
We arrived on scene, and when we did, they were just off of the cliffs. Suddenly we had to switch gears. This is not just an assistance mission. We are now looking at a potential rescue.
Now it was inevitable. The ship would soon be lost. Faced with no recourse, the captain was forced to give the command he dreaded most: abandon ship. Fierce winds buffeted the chopper. Frozen seas slammed the ailing Monarch. Miraculously, the first 4 sailors were lifted without incident.
After the 4th guy got off the boat, me and Morse were still standing up there, and boom. The bow of the boat hit real hard onto something.
And that's when we decided to get off the boat.
captain said, we're on the rocks, we want off.
So I said, okay, let's go. And I opened up the door.
We were sitting there watching as the captain and the engineer went to cross the middeck.
I turned around and I saw out of the corner of my eye that wave.
And just crushed. And we were sitting there watching, oh no, did you see that?
And the next thing I remember, I was looking up and the boat was coming down on top of me.
First thoughts in our mind were, did they survive? We couldn't lower the basket immediately. All we could do was sit there for several seconds just waiting for the sea to give us a chance. And these waves were just hammering these guys. We had no idea if they were conscious, if they were injured, or in all honesty, if they were even still alive.
I was laying on my back flat out, and there was a big chunk of ice sitting on top of me. I looked at the chopper and I knew she couldn't do nothing. I looked at the shore, and there must have been 200 or 300 people standing there. And I looked at them and I go, wow, they're not going to be able to do anything either. You know, all these people, I'm dying in front of all these people. I looked again out of the corner of my eye and another wave was coming at me. I looked at that wave and I seen huge pieces of ice in there. It looked like pianos coming at me. I thought for sure that that was the one. That was it. It was over. I was going under and there was nothing that was going to save me. Boom. I took that piece of ice off of me and whew, it was amazing. I was saved by the wave that I thought was going to kill me.
Well, at that point, the ocean was making up our mind for us because it wasn't just one wave, it was a series of waves. I opted to first put the basket down and see, okay, are these guys capable of getting in?
When she dropped the basket, she dropped it right there. I mean, I had to move a little bit, you know, to crawl towards it. And once I got my hands on that basket,
he just hopped it, no problem at all. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen anyone get in a basket as fast as he did.
The next thing I knew, I was sitting inside the door with one of the Coast Guard fellows leaning over me. I go, you gotta get the skipper. You gotta get that guy. You have to get that guy.
The captain was pinned with a block of ice on his chest, so we weren't going to be able to pull him straight out. We decided to pull him out with the aircraft. We set the basket back down to him. We were able to just kind of finesse him and ease him a few inches out from underneath that block.
And I reached up and grabbed the basket, and they pulled me out from underneath it.
We're only dealing with inches, but we're able to pull him up into the cabin.
Timing on that basket is what saved me. If I couldn't have got away from that ice cake, this next swale coming would have buried me.
We landed at St. Paul Airport. We met by an ambulance. We were able to transfer everyone. And in honesty, the 5.5 hours it took us to get there, it took us 15 minutes from the moment we arrived on scene to when we were shut down with all 6 on board.
I'm not a devout Christian, but I know somebody was watching over me.
When the Alaska Monarch went aground that day, yeah, it changed my life forever. It took me off of the sea.
This was to be the final voyage of the Alaskan Monarch. Coming up, a mother watches in horror as her daughter's life hangs in the balance. Childhood, a time of innocence, an innocence that fades, gradually, invisibly, but not for all. A 12-year-old girl, a carefree ride on the Ferris wheel, slowly spinning, gently rocking her in its cradle, and then, without warning, the cradle did fall.
The way the Ferris wheel was sitting is whenever you went up, you would see the ocean and all, and the ocean looked real nice. Everything looked peaceful, everybody having a good time. And it was a nice sunny summer day. I was having fun, you know, I was enjoying myself.
When they went up the backside to make their third turn, we heard a real loud noise and bodies started flying. Have you ever seen your mother use a mixer and mix fly everywhere? This is what it looked like. Bodies just shoot out of there, just like they were just being spit out. And they're being beat back and forth, just like tennis shoes and clothes dryer. It seemed like it was hours where time just stopped, just really slow. And that was my daughter.
It felt like a nightmare. Like I had went to sleep and all of this was happening, and I thought, I'm gonna wake up. I'm gonna wake up real soon. But I wasn't awake.
I could see her face. But something in the back of my head said if you scream her name, she'll look for you and she'll fall. I think it was like 47 feet, face first on the asphalt. I feel like if she had failed, that she would have died, because there was no motion. And I think with her just falling straight down into this heavy stuff, because it was all steel, you know, falling head first, it probably could have broken her neck.
I was trying to pull myself up, and I felt pain in my right arm. And I remember hollering, I want to let go, I want to let go.
I could hear her saying something, but I couldn't make out what she was saying over the screams.
And then I heard a voice. I looked and I saw this man, and he said, don't let go. Do not let go. Hang on. And he kept talking to me and telling me just to hang on. Help was coming. He was my guardian angel. I felt like I was hanging there forever. And then I felt hands grab onto me. When I felt those hands, it felt like I'm saved.
Her arm was broke completely in two, like 1 inch from the socket of her shoulder. You tell me how she managed to get her arm up and pull her body upright to hang. I don't know how she did it. Who thinks you're going to get on a Ferris wheel and lose your life? We were very, very grateful that night. It's been a long time and it still hurts. Since then, I'm scared she's going to get hurt. Scarlett's had severe headaches for years. She'd sit at the table and lay her head down and cry because the pain was so bad. I wish we had not gone to the beach. I wish we had stayed home. I wish we had argued. I wish we had done anything to prevent what happened. When you go through something like this, you really think things over. Don't take anything for granted. Take care of your children. Regardless if they get mad, take care of your children. And love them.
Jurors say O.J. must pay. Tonight, the plaintiffs and the jurors speak out after a verdict that could doom O.J. Simpson to a lifetime of debt. Plus, a deadly obsession. A Fox 11 News special report shows how kids can turn into fire starters. He cheated death. Now you'll hear the survivor talk about his close call and a high-tech close shave. See how the laser razor is helping people lose unwanted hair. Fox 11 News is next.